drought conditions and the high likelihood of large fires will travel across the southern half of the state to the western slope. It will travel up the west slope. Longer term predictions are that there's some potential for monsoonal moistures later in June on the western slope of Colorado to maybe give us a little reprieve on that side. But current forecasts are that the Front Range will go into drought conditions, extreme conditions going into July. So the season is not looking wonderful us, but I will get into some of the announcements from today and the thanks to Governor Polis and Senator President Finberg on the things that they're doing. I want to start by framing this with wanted fire versus unwanted fire. I think that's something that gets debated quite a bit. We all know that fire is part of the ecosystem, and that fire at the right time, right place, right conditions, that's a good thing, right? You also have to have the right resources available. What I'm describing to you is to tell you that given the current forecasts, our opportunities to use fire as a tool, those opportunities are going to be few and far between. And what I'm going to talk about a lot today in our preparedness plan is unwanted fires. And the strategy for Colorado for unwanted fires is fairly simple, if you will. It is early detection and aggressive initial attack. Get the support to the local firefighters on the ground to keep these fires from getting named and being multi-day or multi-month events. That is our strategy. Our priorities have been and will remain public and firefighter safety, incident stabilization, property conservation, endangered species and environmental impacts, and then resource benefit. So while we will use fire for resource benefit when conditions are right, we think those opportunities are likely to be limited this year. Early detection, the multi-mission aircraft out here. I want you to take a close look at that. That's a program we implemented in 2015. That aircraft is an early detection and intelligence aircraft. Since we brought that aircraft on, we've detected over 600 fires that nobody knew about. Latitude, longitude was given to the local response agency. The fire was found, put out. It didn't get a name, didn't make the news. Those are the fires that we're talking about. We want to get those eliminated. We also use a Fire Guard program that is a national asset, and with our partnerships with Colorado National Guard to provide additional early detection capabilities and technologies. Our model is spend a few dollars today and save millions tomorrow, and that's the way we're leaning into this program and our problem. We also, as Director Hilke mentioned, we have developed a preparedness level system. Our federal partners for years have had a preparedness level from 1 through 5, with 1 being the lowest fire danger to 5 being extreme fire danger. We've adapted that into the state of Colorado so that we can move resources around the state based upon those preparedness levels. As Director Hilke mentioned today, we've brought over a strike team from the western, 2 strike teams actually from the western slope, 1 in northeast Colorado, 1 will be in southeast Colorado to help support those local agencies. We've moved our helicopter assets over to this side of the hill, as well as one of the multi-mission aircraft. There's 2 of those. One of those is down in Mesa County. In case the winds become challenging over here for it to fly, we'll be able to launch one from that side of the hill. So single engine air tankers, seats, also out here for display. We have 2 of those available to us. One was brought on in February, 1 was brought on in March. So we have 2 of those available. Type 2 helicopters, 1 in February, 1 in March, so we have 2 of those. As I mentioned, the large air tanker will come on. We're moving that back a month. That will come on in May. And the big news, again, as Governor Polis mentioned, is that our intent, and with the support of the governor's office and President Finberg, is that we will bring on a second large air tanker for part of the season and 2 additional Type 1 helicopters. That would bring our total fleet, if we can find the contracting, as Director Hilke mentioned, that would be 3 Type 1 helicopters, 2 Type 2 helicopters, 2 large air tankers, 2 multi-mission aircraft, and 2 single engine air tankers. We also have call when needed contracts with multiple other aviation assets, and really all of that is to support the ground crews to keep fires small, so the folks that you see around the room standing next to the engines can do their job safely to get the fires put out. Probably one of the most exciting news for me, if you will, as I've been in the fire service, much like Director Hilke. I've been in this business for almost 40 years. The funding to build a statewide fire resource mobilization dispatch center is a huge step forward for us, and we're super excited about that. And for those of you in this room, you understand this, that we're seeing with the fire problems we're seeing in Colorado, we're seeing that local public safety answering point, or PSAP 911 center, they're overwhelmed early and more often because of these large fires. What this allows us to do is to build a statewide dispatch center in partnership with our federal partners, so it will be working with them to dispatch aviation assets as well as regional and statewide mutual aid system for fire-based resources. That is beyond just wildfire, but for all fire-based resources. So with that, I believe I will wrap it up and hand it back to the governor and open it up for any questions.
Thank you. We also have representatives of the federal government and others here for your questions. We'll be happy to take some questions.
One question, Governor, what's the status of the Firehawk that the state talked about?
Yeah, the helicopter delivery is expected in early May. It will then be brought to the location in Colorado that converts it to a Firehawk. We expect the completion and delivery in November or December of the Firehawk. We have, with the additional resources today, we just went over, so in the fire preparedness meeting, there's a number of different resources available, BLM, Forest Service, et cetera. The additional resources today are for 2 additional Type 1 helicopters for this season. So that is an important classification of helicopter. It's really the first rapid response. They're able to fly in a much wider variety of conditions than some of our aircraft, and they're very effective at early stages of preventing fires from becoming major events.
So just to clarify with regard to the Firehawk, delivery in May, but it needs to be outfitted still and it won't be available this firefighting season?
I think it's ahead of schedule. It was going to be for before May of next year, but we are expecting it will be completed by November, December of this year.
Is the buying of aircraft also getting the exclusive lease on things part of the bigger picture that includes ground people, that we are going fast attack? Is that a new strategy or way we're approaching?
Yeah, so there's such demand for the assets during fire season, and in real time, whoever controls them really can have a major impact. So, you know, there could be fires in Idaho, Oregon, California, here, and that's why it's so important to be in a controlling position with regard to these leases. So that's what we will be securing. We have some already on board, 1 air tanker, adding a second, as well as the helicopter assets.
And we've gone into kind of a mode of year-round, but it's the driest that we look at each year. It sounds like we're prepped as far as the state. I was talking to a firefighter yesterday. He said, we need the public to think beyond, oh, it's somebody throwing out a cigarette, but they said it needs to be a proactive, am I throwing sparks from a chains, or
Yeah.
how urgent are we looking at this year?
Yeah, it's really all of the above, right? So there's a lot of attention to fire bans where and when they exist, but it's about a lot more than that. It's about chains on tires, it's about lawn equipment, it's about barbecues, it's about cigarettes. So all of these types of activities can and have caused human-caused fires here in Colorado. So we want people to be fire smart as they live their lives, not just while they are, for instance, camping, and not using a camping fire or in an area where it's not banned, making sure it's securely put out. Yes, check that box, but there's a lot more to the individual responsibility side than just that.
And who does that apply to, Governor? Because obviously, you know, we saw the Marshall fire, it was suburban Denver essentially. Are you talking to everyone along the Front Range when you say be vigilant when it comes to those things?
Yeah, it truly means be vigilant, not just when you're camping in the backcountry, in your neighborhood, in your open space near your home. This large suburban wildfire affected entire subdevelopments, residential subdevelopments. So be thoughtful about working with us on subdevelopment perimeter defense, home perimeter defense. If there's fuel near your home, it'd be an excellent time to be able to reduce your risk by removing those potential sources of danger to your home. And in addition, taking on that individual responsibility to be fire smart.
As you talk about individual responsibility, what happens to the people who are caught actually starting wildfires? For example, the in-car fire was said to be started
Yeah.
by someone. What will happen there? Are there any measures or is there anything in place for something like that happens?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. Certainly, local fire departments, local agencies, police and sheriff's offices help in this. That's sort of the first line for cause and origin investigations. And there are criminal penalties for criminal activity with regards to starting fire. And, we rely hard on our locals to do that. We are available to assist them when requested. The Forest Service and the BLM also have cause and origin investigation elements within their pieces as well. And when somebody becomes criminally liable, they can be held accountable through the criminal justice process.
So what happens, let's say if you do get caught, you are held liable, then what happens to that person? What type of punitive measures are there?
That's highly speculative, based on the charge and the type of crime, the resources that were burned. I mean, as you know, there was a individual held accountable in the Hayman fire, which was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And obviously restitution is not an option for significant amount that time. But, that person did incarceration time plus pretty lengthy, I understand, supervision post-incarceration, and the like. So those are the types of things that can happen on large fires. Depends on the size of the fire, depends on the type of class of crime that somebody gets charged with.
I just think the biggest thing is that if I lost my home and I know that someone started it, I want to know they will pay, right? There will be something that will actually happen to them. And I understand that it's depending on the size, but what's just something that's going to prevent this to make people think twice about going and having that barbecue, going and flicking that cigarette butt? What's something that's going to happen for them to make sure that they don't do that?
Well, I will just say this, that it all depends on the carelessness, the criminal activity, et cetera. Accidents do happen, legitimate accidents do happen. That's one of the reasons that we have insurance and the like as well. So, yes, there are opportunities for people to be held accountable if they're negligent, if they're careless, if they're criminally acting, et cetera. But there are scenarios as well where there's accidental, fires or whatever, where somebody's less likely to get held accountable in that role.
I have a question about the strategy surrounding the forecast. Mr. Martin.
Sure.
You mentioned that the forecast called for the front range to manage through drought through July. I mean, a lot of people, of course, live in the front range. I'm just wondering if there's any strategy based on that forecast this year for how you're positioning things and fighting fires that might emerge.
Great question. I think the answer to it, as I described earlier, preparedness level system, the fire dangers in Colorado vary day by day, right? I mean, we've got places of the state that are still under snow while other places are seeing the most extreme fire behavior we've ever seen. Putting a preparedness level system together where we're able to pre-position resources to different parts of the state based upon what we predict for fire behavior, like today, the things that we're doing. Now that is not a one-off, if you will. It's new to the state of Colorado. We've been developing that over the last couple of years. So the resources I was speaking of, we will be doing that based upon what's happening anywhere across the state for this fire season and for future fire seasons. In addition, that dispatch center that I alluded to, partnering with our federal partners, allows us to dispatch aviation assets quicker through on the shoulder season fires, if you will, those times of years where we historically had not seen those. Our contracts are much longer contracts than what a lot of our federal partners have often. So it provides this additional depth as well as the ability to move those resources around in what we call surge capacity, mutual aid capacity, to be better prepared to respond to that.
So, like, in a place with so many people, and you have this plane that can search for fires, is like, are you gonna be out every day looking for fires in conditions like this? I just was wondering how aggressive you have to be.
So we've got systems that are monitored 24/7, that do early detection work for us 24/7. We also have, as I mentioned, the multi-mission aircraft, and the dispatch of the multi-mission aircraft happens in a couple of different ways. One would be is if a local fire chief or a sheriff said, hey, there's a lot of human activity going on in this area, there's a lot of campfires or whatever, can you come out and take a look? We would take that aircraft up and do that. In addition to that, if we have, for example, if we had a thunderstorm come through with a lot of lightning activity, we take the maps that we get from our other federal partners and agencies like NOAA and those types of folks, and we take those maps and we dispatch that aircraft to areas we know have had a lot of lightning, and use that aircraft to do that. We found 600 of it, as I've said, in the last several years. If you go to our website and you look at it, there's one particular video that just amazes me when I look at this technology, is that I believe it was down in southwest Colorado. That aircraft was flying at 22,000 feet above ground level, 3.5 nautical miles out. So you can't see anything with your naked eye with that, but that aircraft zoomed in and you could see the spark showers coming from a single tree lightning strike. So the technologies, our partnerships with General McClellan and the National Guard, we're using a lot of that military technologies to help us with heat sensing and those types of things. And I will tell you, we're using other programs. Our Center of Excellence, which is here today, Director Ben Miller is here. You can talk to him. Colorado is leaning in hard on technology because technology will make the difference in that early detection. So programs like COTAC, the fire guard programs, the cameras and different things that are on that multi-mission aircraft, and we're leveraging that kind of technology every day to be better at what we do. Oh, yes, and to your point, Director Hilke wanted me to mention fire bans. We get a lot of questions to us always about statewide fire bans. As I kind of mentioned earlier, is Colorado is very diverse. You've got elevations from 14,000 foot to 2,500 foot, where you can have 4 foot of snow in one spot while you've got red flag warnings in another spot. We hesitate to try to take a statewide approach to fire bans. We've done that in the past when conditions dictate, but what we really rely on is the local fire chiefs and local sheriffs, local county commissioners to make those decisions based upon their local community needs. So the specific questions and those types of things, a lot of times we get those questions, but they're best deferred to your sheriff or your fire chief or your county commissioners, because we try to keep that local control as much as we can because of the huge diversity in the state.
For today's extreme conditions, can you tell us where those strike team locations are, specifically southeast Colorado, why there, and what makes up a strike team?
Great question. There is one in the Lakewood area and I think one in the Pueblo area. I'm phoning a friend over there, Chief Jones, so he's shaking his head like this. So the other one is in the Pueblo area. And a strike team is 5 or more similar types of engines with leadership. It would likely be wildland engines because of the conditions, with a supervisor that are rapidly deployed. They're pre-positioned in an area. I mean, we know local fire agencies are going to be busier than they normally are. We also know they're going to be running their routine medical calls and fire alarms and structure fires and all those other things. So it brings additional resources into a region to allow for that surge in calls, if you will, as well as additional resources if something was to get larger to focus on trying to keep it small.
Like, I'm trying to gauge your true level of concern. You said not a lot of it doesn't look great. Are you sugarcoating that for us a little bit, or what's your true? I mean, you can lay it on us.
I've been in this business for 36 years, and the only absolute is there are no absolutes. I learned that early on. What I do know is that in watching, I responded to the South Canyon fire in 1994, where 14 firefighters were killed outside of Glenwood Springs. I responded to it after the fire had blown up from rifle. In the back of an ambulance is a report of 40 firefighters missing. And I saw what I thought would be the most catastrophic event of my life, with 14 fatalities. And that fire was just over 2,000 acres. So I thought that was huge then, and it did used to be huge. And then I look at things like the East Troublesome fire, where it burns 25 miles overnight. So I'm not trying to be evasive. I know our risk is significant this year, and people have to do their part. And I applaud the governor and the Senate, President Senate Finberg and the leadership of the state for leaning in hard. We're leaning in harder than we ever have been able to do a better job with, again, unwanted fires, early detection, aggressive initial attack, and supporting the boots on the ground, the firefighters that are standing here and sitting over here, getting them the resources and the assets that they need quicker. I think the other thing I wanted to kind of mention, you know, that Governor Polis mentioned is about operational control. Historically, we've relied on our federal partners for all the aviation assets to help support us and the firefighters on the ground and getting their job done, which meant that we were competing with 19 states across the West. I've been on fires, I can't tell you how many times in that 36 years where I was like, we really need a large air tanker, or we really need a Type 1 helicopter, to have the response back to me to go, the closest one is in Arizona and they're not releasing it. It's not available to you. And as a local fire chief or a local incident commander, that makes you panic. You feel pretty helpless in that moment. So to know that we're leaning in hard, where the goal, again, has been mentioned, what we're trying to accomplish with this would be to build a dispatch center for rapid mobilization of fire-based resources, have extended contracts for a large air tanker, a second large air tanker on a 4-month contract, 3 Type 1 helicopters, 2 Type 2 helicopters, 2 single-engine air tankers, plus those assets that our federal partners bring to the table. I was 44 large air tankers nationally. Those are the ones we're competing for with 19 states. But to know that we have those assets available to us here is critical to that success. So again, I'm not trying to be evasive. I feel good about how prepared we are. But I know we are going to have some tough days and some bad days, and a ton of that really relies on, as the governor said and Director Hilke said, and I tried to allude to when I said we are the Division of Fire Prevention and Control. We want to prevent the fire first, and we're going to do our dangest to put it out as quick as we can when it's threatening lives and property, and we're better prepared to do that than we ever have been in the past.
Just to follow up on that, Mike, what do you mean by leaning in hard? And, I mean, can you give us some example? I mean, obviously we see the assets around here, but do you feel better prepared than ever before? And, you know, are you feeling ill prepared in some ways?
I'm going to turn to Director Hilke and say, but I absolutely do feel better prepared than we ever have. I know that historically, you know, this is talking decades ago, that the traditional model of state or federal response to these events was to show up after the fire was big and show up with a checkbook. And we're providing enhanced state assistance with resources and support that are free of charge to local governments to keep those fires small before they get big.
You just stole my thunder.
Sorry, boss.
I was going to give you the perspective of a sheriff. I was a sheriff in Grand Junction, Colorado, Mesa County, and it was the practice of the state, and you know, where the fire had to burn over the ridge before, you know, we usually got help. And these days, with our enhanced state assistance and the ability to rapidly respond and our value of aggressive initial attack, we're not letting that happen anymore as much as possible. So, you know, leaning in hard means all of these assets that we just listed and rattled off that are exclusive to Colorado, which is amazing. And we never used to have that. We had to rely on just the federal resources. Plus the prepositioning of ground crews, just like we talked about, strike teams, and strike teams come with people. That is work. And then we've worked hard with the Fire Chiefs Association in the state as well about, you know, how we bring in mutual aid rapidly. I remember on the East Troublesome fire, when it burned over the Continental Divide and started to headed down to Estes Park, there were dozens of engines in structure protection efforts, you know, in Estes Park. Those are the kinds of leaning efforts that we're talking about, and I think those are the kinds of efforts that make us more successful.
Any additional questions? Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Governor. Good job.
Thank you.
Governor, good to see you.
Depends on location. Typically, they're named after.
Always good to visit with you.